I wouldn't personally describe it as an occupation. I think it was a very reasonable defensive operation around Gaza to prevent Hamas from attacking Israel from Gaza. And don't forget as well that Israel increasingly allowed...
The true base take here, okay, is obviously just that occupations can be lawfully created in self-defense, and you have a right to seek legitimate interest in that occupation.
Was it your idea to shoot Palestinians and aim to maim them as they peacefully marched for their normal and basic rights?
I bet Sinwar didn't say anything about co-opting the march to try to tear down the Gaza wall. You know, there could have been a reality where the Great March of Return was peaceful. It was initially planned to be peaceful, but I think it was definitely co-opted by Hamas.
That their lives would be at risk if they tried to cross the border, and they were planting IEDs, they were throwing Molotov cocktails, they were acting in person against the IDF, in order to have the IDF act defensively. But you want to talk about...
She's literally doing cuddle logic. She literally just switched from like denying the attack to like justifying it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support the channel, and I'll make sure to reply. Israel's favorite cheerleader, October 7th, 1 year on. Norman Finkelstein and Naftali Bennett. I think Finkelstein is anything but normal. Okay, skip the intro, don't care. Skibbity Biden. Skibbity Biden's awesome, man.
The world did not begin on October the 7th, but it did change. And just as it's reductive to ignore the decades of conflict before that callous attack, it's ignorant to pretend that it doesn't underpin the chaos and suffering now engulfing the Middle East. A year ago, Hamas terrorists...
Finkelstein abnormal? I don't know. He talks really slow. He's an insane, unhinged hack historian, conspiracy, Iron Dome conspiracy theorist. Israel said October spit on a thing. True.
1,200 innocent people, taking 250 more as hostages. The sheer scale of the atrocity and the animalistic barbarism of the killers shocked the world. It decimated Israel's sense of security with chilling echoes of the Holocaust. It brought Israel into direct conflict with Iran's proxy militias and ultimately with Iran itself.
I have to speed it up.
The world today is a different and a more dangerous place, and it is because of what Hamas did on October 7th.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that every injustice before or since can be justified. So why do I repeatedly ask supporters of the Palestinian cause to condemn Hamas? Well, quite simply, it's an assessment of their humanity. If you're so blinded by your hatred of Israel that you can't bring yourself to be repulsed by the savagery of October the 7th and condemn it, how can you possibly have a fair-minded view on the compromises that will be needed on the long road to peace? And let me be equally clear, the exact same thing applies in the other direction. If you cannot mourn the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians, if you can't acknowledge their long-standing oppression and suffering, then why should I trust you to have a constructive view on their future? Tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians have been killed in the war on Hamas. That's a fact. Many thousands more are confined with their grief in a territory that's become little better than a prison camp, with more than half of its buildings now in ruins. And now Beirut is burning as the IDF bombards Lebanon. The world is watching...
He's not entirely wrong, but one, it's probably a dumb way to like lead the conversation, just asking people to... I mean, it makes for good fucking YouTube content, but just asking people to condemn either side, right? But also, it's just so... You should make very clear the moral distinction between those who purposefully target civilians and those who incidentally kill civilians while purposefully targeting militants.
To see how Iran will respond to the decapitation of its militias. It's now more likely...
I know, they're clearly a righteous resistance organization fighting oppression
could enter a war that
to end the Gaza occupation.
Too. And all the while, the people of Gaza remain trapped in what looks increasingly like a permanent occupation with no Israeli exit strategy. So yes, the world did not begin on October the 7th.
Damn, fuck.
Wow, it did change.
Dude, does Twitch even care? I don't think Twitch would care if I actually did unironically support Hamas. They have Hassan, they have Casey. It doesn't condemn Hamas. I don't know about NOK. Like, they have Gorps. I don't know about Gorps. Like,
a lot. The only thing that did not change and will not change is that Israelis and Palestinians living side by side, cheek by jowl, neighbor by neighbor, has to be the way that everybody works to find peace. There is no other way. In a moment, I'll discuss this with my panel, but first, the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is not currently involved in politics, at least officially. The polls show he's the favoured choice of Israelis to replace Benjamin Netanyahu, and he joins me now. Naftali Bennett, thank you very much indeed for rejoining me on Uncensored.
He got the fucking leader of the opposition here? Is there an equivalent number of civilians you can kill incidentally for civilians you kill purposely? What do you mean by that? What?
An overall de-escalation across the Middle East. It would seem
that Israel... There's more. Is there an equivalent number? Oh, I know what you're asking. Okay, here's the thing. When I when I say there's a moral distinction, I'm talking about the moral standing of the perpetrators, not necessarily about the outcome. I'm sure we could all agree. Obviously, the outcome, like the suffering caused, right, by the deaths of 40,000 people, it's a lot bigger than the suffering caused by the deaths of the 1,200 people, some of which were militants on October 7th, right? Clearly, there's a moral distinction in between what the perpetrators are intending. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, no matter how many civilians Israel incidentally kills, as long as they're incidentally killing them and not purposefully killing them, there's always a moral distinction there, even if the outcome of Israel's actions are worse. Like, we could imagine a case where morally Israel, the outcome of Israel's actions are like worse morally, obviously, just because if they cause like such an unbelievable amount of like death and destruction or whatever. But although that would probably, I mean, that would amount to disproportionate attacks, obviously. There's always even between failing in proportionality, there's a distinction even between failing in proportionality and failing in distinction, which are two principles of IHL when it comes to the moral standing of the people perpetrating it. Morality depends, doesn't it? Changes wildly if the person you're trying to take out would end the world. You could possibly take out 1 billion intentionally as collateral. Yeah, probably. What is bro yapping about?
Well,
not busting for real. Damn, destroyed.
Why?
Because the idea to cease fire after we've been massively attacked and the threat continues to exist is ridiculous, right? Iran just lobbed 200 additional ballistic missiles at Israel.
Wait, is this guy to the right of Netanyahu? Is he I thought he was going to be the left-wing opposition leader. Is he, what party is he in?
Hezbollah has been pounding our cities for 11 months, now 12 months. Hamas murdered, raped, tortured, kidnapped our people.
Leader of the new right. It's a right-wing party. Religious and secular, or aims to both religious and secular people. Party did not win any seats in the 2018 election.
General expects us to suddenly stop and say, now we'll just wait, and for the next time, that doesn't make any sense.
But what is the end game?
We need to remove the threat.
But what is it? Okay, I understand that. But what is the end game? Given that we're now hearing the same rhetoric we heard in Gaza, which is that Hezbollah are hiding in civilian areas, that's why Israel has to bomb civilian areas, and if there are casualties on the civilian side, that's collateral damage. We heard all this with Gaza. Now, half of Gaza has gone up in ruins. Is the objective here that you will just destroy anything and anyone that gets in the path of removing Hezbollah and Hamas? And what is the acceptable level of civilian?
I mean, I'm pretty sure Hamas's use of I hate the term human shield so much. I hate it so much. Of human shields, though, was inspired by Hezbollah, right? I'm pretty sure that is true.
Billion collateral damage.
Saying if North Korea would actually go to nuke America, and America could nuke North Korea, why not the entire population before they launch? Is there any president would make that call? Yeah, probably.
The end game is a secure Israel and indeed a secure Middle East.
Although the use of nuclear weapons itself is, I think, illegal under IHL. But yeah.
With the horrible threats of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas gone, what we thought for many years, what our leadership in Israel thought, is that we can live with these sort of threats, with these sort of Nazi-type threats. What October 7th taught us is that we can't. When our enemies say we want to annihilate the Jews, they mean it. And now we've seen it in action on October 7th, but that's only a miniature.
Good thing America isn't a signatory to what? To the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? I'm pretty sure we are.
Model of what would happen if we do not take care of Iran and indeed Hezbollah, the regime in Iran. So in Gaza, what we want to see is a prosperous Gaza, but we must retain the security responsibility so Hamas cannot rebuild.
Yeah, we recognize nuclear weapon state ratifiers. I'm pretty sure this prohibits us using them. I don't know. But they probably fail in distinction anyway. They're probably considered indiscriminate.
In Lebanon, we want to see a prosperous Lebanon that has been hijacked by Hezbollah. So we are now dramatically degrading Hezbollah. So if it were a company, we've taken out the CEO, taken out the board of directors, taken out most of mid-management. This is a huge opportunity for the people of Lebanon to take charge of their country again. We will not tolerate Hezbollah on our border anymore, period.
We want a prosperous Lebanon immediately calls for a fucking civil war in Lebanon. Okay, dude.
Full stop.
Right, but what is the amount of collateral damage in terms of civilian deaths that you're prepared to countenance as you prosecute Hezbollah?
The question should not go to us. The question should go to Hezbollah itself. If they plant rockets within homes, that is no longer a home. It's a terror base. If they decide to murder their own children by...
I mean, he's right about that. Under IHL, a residential home can be considered a lawful military target if it's being used in a military manner or as a military purpose, like
placing children there. That's at their doorstep. You should ask them.
You indicated that you think it's time to go after Iran and its leadership and its nuclear program. There are many people who sense that there is a timidity from Iran in responding to the attacks on Hamas and Hezbollah, which suggests that they know they could not withstand a direct attack from Israel. They don't have the capability, certainly not to do any kind of meaningful counterattack. Is that your belief? And do you believe that this is a unique opportunity for Israel to actually go and topple the Iranian regime?
I wonder what it'll say to this, but this is 9 years ago. I read that Israel was considering that it wanted to kill Khomeini. Oh, man.
Yes, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
What if the glowing red eyes Biden behind you? Watch out, he's going to sniff your ass, bro. That's what I'm hoping for.
Because Iran's
Biden
strategy,
I
called it the octopus of terror. The head of the octopus is in Tehran, and it sends its arms all across the Middle East. But two of its most important arms, Hamas and Hezbollah, are dramatically weakened and right now cannot mount an effective retaliation. So in effect, Iran is laid bare and is vulnerable. And if we don't take care of Iran, if we leave Iran as it is, they'll rebuild their tentacles. They're going to fund a new Hezbollah, fund a new Hamas. Only if we neutralize their nuclear program and hit the head of the octopus, ultimately, not tomorrow, but ultimately within a few years, toppling the Iranian regime, that'll bring a whole new future to the Middle East. And it's possible because this regime is not only very radical and savage, it's also corrupt, incompetent, and despised by its own people. So what we can essentially do is give a gift to the wonderful people of Iran by hitting its regime, hitting the nuclear facilities, and allowing its people to press for regime change.
There are many critics of the Israeli government and Prime Minister Netanyahu who believe that he has been acting a lot in self-interest, that he knows he's facing corruption charges when this is all over.
Would you support Iran doing a regime change of Israel? Is he going to say that?
And that he's getting more popular the more he bombs Lebanon. And therefore, there's no incentive for him to even think about any kind of ceasefire in that particular fighting. You've been very critical yourself of Netanyahu. Is he the right person to be leading Israel right now? Or should it be somebody like you?
I don't try to get into someone's brain and his intentions. Right now, Israel is united behind the need to hit Iran's regime and to stop its nuclear progress. I want to point out, Piers, that Iran is at its most advanced point in history in terms of its nuclear program. It's accumulated enough high-grade enriched uranium to produce 10 bombs. It's reached the amount for 10 bombs, and it's moving forward, manufacturing the device itself, the detonator. We cannot allow this to be. Now, it wasn't me, it was President Biden who 2 years ago vouched that he would not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. He would use all of
that's, kind of after, Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, which, would have been making sure they weren't making fucking nuclear weapons, but okay.
Tools to stop that. This is money time. It's now. If we think this is a theoretical scenario, I'd say that until a year ago we thought that it's a theoretical scenario that 6,000 terrorists would invade Israel and butcher and burn and rape Israelis. So this is reality. Israel's doing the hard, tough work on behalf of the free world. I mean, Iran's not going to stop there. America is the big Satan in their jargon. Israel, the small Satan. So I expect the world to help us in this, in my opinion, heroic battle against the forces of evil.
But there are many people who believe that the sheer volume of civilians, women, children, being killed in such huge numbers, and if the Lebanon offensive continues the way that the Gaza one did, there'll be tens of thousands more potentially killed. That is simply unjustified. That Israel may have a right to defend itself. Everyone understands that you want to protect yourselves and your people from Hamas and Hezbollah and obviously Iran, whose tentacles, like you say, are right behind it all. But at what cost? And you know that a lot of global public opinion has been railing against Israel. It's become a lonelier and lonelier place
Hamas numbers
for Israel
are fake.
in these battles that you're fighting.
I bet he's
Are you
bring
not
that
concerned that at the end of all this, you end up with two things: a very isolated country, reviled by a lot of the world, but secondly, you would have killed the ideology. That when you kill tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza and maybe potentially again in Lebanon, you're fueling the ideology behind the groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, which were forged out of what they perceive to be Israel's oppression and occupation.
I dispute that assumption, Piers. Israel has not been aggressive towards Gaza nor Lebanon. In fact, we have no territorial claim neither in Lebanon nor in Gaza. Our strategy...
I mean... I'm pretty sure Israel, there are, at least some people in Israel, do want to occupy some parts of Gaza, the Philadelphia corridor and the corridor by Gaza City, the Netzarim, it's like Netzarim corridor, this place they want to occupy, which, I mean, it's understandable why they want to. Seems like a lot of people in Israel want to permanently occupy at least these two corridors. There are no people left. Where can ideology exist? Oh, true. And then in Lebanon, I guess they're not occupying Lebanon, but they did annex the Golan Heights,
Israel's strategy,
which is like Syria,
many years, was to
right
allow them
next
to
to
prosper.
Lebanon.
Yet they decided they want to turn their countries into terror bases against Israel. So there's no basis for saying that, when we let go of them, they lay down their arms. Quite the contrary. The only way to do away with this ideology is to destroy these terror groups. It's like the Nazis. You could not barge in December of 1944 and persuade the Nazis to let go of their ideology. The only way for them to do away with that ideology is to win. Once you beat the Nazis, once you remove that regime, they could engage in the next stage. And I think that's a possibility in Lebanon and Gaza. And one last point. Okay,
I don't completely disagree with this point here. I think there's a better way to phrase it. Basically, I think it's clear, as long as Hamas is the ruling authority in Gaza, right? There's probably no way that the conditions of people in Gaza ever get better. I don't know. Imagine this ends in whatever ceasefire, and there's Hamas is still kept in charge in Gaza. I would imagine the blockade in Gaza would probably have to be more strict than it is now, and it's already relatively strict. That's probably, compared to people, even compared to conditions to people in the West Bank, even under full Israeli occupation, compared to the people in Gaza, right? Because the West Bank is under less radical leadership, the conditions to people there are significantly better than they are in Gaza. I think clearly, if less radical leadership is able to be put in control in Gaza, even if it is other Arab states, I think this, the U.S. plan at some point at least, was to have a coalition of some Arab states control Gaza after the war. I think clearly that's the only way the conditions of people in the Gaza Strip get better.
Airplane right above me right now.
Still, the Egyptian pharaohs felt for letting the Hebrews go through that.
If we give in to this modus operandi that says that when they hide their rockets and their terrorists amid their children, that turns them into immune. That means that every terrorist in the world, in London, Paris, New York, will use the very same strategy. To do it. That would be the biggest mistake. We have to fight terrorists, even though they use that.
It's not entirely wrong, but attacks do still have to adhere to the principle of proportionality. Using human shields doesn't mean those people get to be counted any less in proportionality assessments. However, one thing it does mean is that the feasibility of other attacks is reduced, so you are probably granted more leeway to kill more civilians if the enemy is human shielding, just because the feasibility of other types of attacks that would potentially kill less civilians is reduced.
Cynical strategy. Otherwise, they'll continue to use that strategy, and you'll get it all around the world. And again, Israel is doing the hard work, the thankless work on behalf of the world. We continue getting criticized, but we're doing the work for everyone else. So it's so easy to sit on the woke benches and say, this is not okay. I would only suggest one thing. Give us an alternative. Tell us, what would you do if you got 200 ballistic missiles over the weekend on your homes in Miami or New York or Los Angeles? What would you do if 1,400 Americans or Brits were raped, burnt in their houses, and kidnapped by these terror groups?
Naftali Bennett, thank you very much indeed for joining me again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Piers.
Piers won't
even answer. I'm joined by the political scientist Norman Finkelstein, the Egyptian journalist.
Finkelstein, let's go.
Israeli-American commentator Emily Shrader, and the former British Army officer and board member of Friends of Israel Initiative, Colonel Richard Kemp. Thank you all very much indeed for joining me. Rahma Zein, let me start with you.
Let's call the former prime minister dude genocidal. Start off with that. What
should Israel have done after October the 7th, given what Hamas did that day, and given that Hezbollah immediately joined in by firing rockets at them, and they were under a two-pronged attack from these two groups? What else could Israel have done but do what it's doing?
Okay, so the thing is, I want to start off with Benjamin Begin, who said, in spying as in war, the legend of success is in itself success. And this has been the case since October 7th. They have played the card that they are the democracy of the Middle East. It's about the hostages. They want to annihilate us. And what has happened so far is this facade of Zionism has dropped. And in Israel, shooting at the world, they have also shot themselves in the foot. I'm going to assume that your question was about October 7th because I can't hear very well. And what we're seeing now, which is exactly what the UN Secretary General has said, which is we have no real power. Let's be honest. The body of the UN that holds some power is paralyzed. And it is exactly this inefficiency to stop Israel's war crimes now that has led to the 7th of October. And you will have more 7th of October to come, because it is unnatural for a people to be occupied and sit idly by. It is actually quite a racist notion to assume such.
Okay.
Oh, what's up, Ophelia? Welcome back.
Colonel Kemp. Colonel Kemp,
you're in YouTube chat right now. I mean, we already went over this. Like, obviously, I don't think the conditions of the people in the Gaza Strip ever get better, unless Hamas got rid of, like, clearly. Also, you know what? I hate it. I don't like that I'm about to say this. Okay, I hate it. I don't even know if I would be opposed to an occupation of Gaza in some respect. At least the Philadelphia corridor and the Netzarim corridor, or whatever the fuck, Netzarim corridor. I like clearly. Thanks, Ophelia. Like, just look at, like, clearly in the West Bank, the conditions. First of all, Israelis are safer from threats in the West Bank. That's less of a threat from the West Bank for Israelis when they're under continued occupation. And two, the conditions of the Palestinians there are also better. Like, I don't even know. Like, here's another thing. Like, this depends if you assume good faith in Israel or not, I guess. Like, if Israel controlled the Philadelphia corridor, like, they'd probably be more willing to accept more aid into the Gaza Strip, because they'd be able to surveil it better. Like, I don't even know. It's evil. It's absolutely evil. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Sample will yell at me later. But life in Gaza is probably better than in Baghdad right now. I would assume it's not. But before October 7th, maybe. I don't think we know that much about the conditions in Gaza. Like, yeah. Like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm just evil. Maybe I am just evil. But, like, yeah.
Issue of occupation.
That's where I'm at.
I mean, it seems to me that however you try and argue this point, that after October 7th,
do people in Baghdad not have internet?
Israel had the ability, the power, to control food going into Gaza, energy going into Gaza, water going into Gaza. I don't know what else you would call that power and control other than occupation. I mean, I know they didn't physically occupy it since 2005 when Hamas took power, but Israel has got this control over Gaza in a way that people in Gaza and many around the world feel is completely unacceptable.
Well,
usually, for occupation to happen, at least generally, it requires a substitution of governments by of the lawful sovereign. Number one, I don't think anyone recognizes Hamas as the lawful sovereign of the Gaza Strip. As far as I'm aware, not a single country recognizes Hamas. Every country that recognizes Palestine recognizes the Palestinian Authority. So, like, technically, if anything, Hamas is the occupier of the Gaza Strip, because the Hamas is substituting the governing authority of the Palestinian Authority, which is arguably the lawful sovereign of the Gaza Strip. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I haven't dived too deep into the occupation thing, but I feel like, I don't know, it's not a super great argument for them being occupied. Dismantling IDF military governance apparatus and the assumption of handing over control of Gaza to Palestinian Authority does not meet the traditional standard of substituting governance of the lawful sovereign. Different standard has been applied by a number. This is like a whatever effective controls test. Such claims ignore the availability of other more suitable legal frameworks, such as the law governing armed conflict, including its provisions on siege, blockade, and international human rights law. Like, I don't know. The issue is, like, I'm not entirely opposed to considering that Gaza's occupied. It could be, like, whatever. I just don't know what is communicated by the word occupation that isn't communicated by the word blockade. I don't know. I haven't found a good answer to that.
You're talking about before October the 7th, I assume, are you?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the argument they put forward, which is what else would you expect but for groups to rise up to try and resist what they perceive to be a glorified prison camp life for all their people.
Yeah, well, Israel left Gaza in 2005 with the intention of it becoming a flourishing free territory. And what happened, Hamas took control very soon after that, and they turned it into a military base to attack Israel from. Israel had no choice other than to control what was going in and out as best it could. Of course, don't forget that Gaza also has a border with Egypt, and Israel did not control that border. But Israel controlled the borders on its own
bathroom
country
door.
and did
I'm
everything it
using
could to prevent
blockaded.
weapons being developed and built up and imported into Gaza. And what would any other country do? It was the obvious thing to do. It had to be done. And that did include, of course, in some cases, control of some of the electricity and some of the water.
More caffeine.
I wouldn't personally describe it as an occupation. I think it was a very reasonable defensive operation around Gaza to prevent Hamas from attacking Israel from Gaza. And don't forget as well that Israel increasingly allowed...
The true base take here, okay, is obviously just that occupations can be lawfully created in self-defense, and you have a right to seek legitimate interest in that occupation. I think there's basically two. The Russia-Ukraine thing actually gives a decent framework for this. Obviously, Russia was not in their right to invade Ukraine and occupy their territory. So clearly, if Russia invades Ukraine, as they did, and they're occupying territory, as they do, if the Ukrainians rise up in that territory, Russia obviously does not have a legitimate right to self-defense within that occupied territory, because that's territory they occupied in a war of aggression or whatever. However, imagine Ukraine in the Kursk region, right? Ukraine, in a war of self-defense, is occupying part of Russia for its own military advantage. If people in the Kursk region in Russia rose up against Ukraine, clearly Ukraine has a legitimate interest in defending themselves in maintaining that occupation there, because that occupation was lawfully created in a war of self-defense, and they have a legitimate interest in maintaining it. I think this is obviously, what did the 6 Day War, the 67 War, where Israel created this occupation, whether that's a war of self-defense is controversial. However, I will say UN Resolution 242 very specifically ties the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the territories occupied to Arab recognition of Israel and a just and lasting peace. That implies that Israel's occupation is probably legal, because the first obligation of a state engaging in illegal conflict or in illegal activities is to immediately cease those illegal activities. No negotiations, no anything. You just have to fucking stop. So the fact that they imply that negotiations have to take place to end that occupation probably implies that the occupation is legal, and Israel has the right to seek legitimate interest within that occupation. Legitimate interests don't extend to everything, by the way. The settlements are probably not a legitimate interest. Certain things within the occupation can be illegal, can be illegitimate interest, and the annexation of territory is illegal regardless. So, for example, it may be fine if Israel occupies the West Bank, or occupies the Golan Heights. However, annexing it, applying Israeli law there, and trying to take it for their own is probably a violation of the there's some provision like the use of force to gain territory or whatever. It's probably a violation of that. Or the acquisition of territory by force, I think it is. There's some provision against that, like in IHL.
More and more civilians from Gaza to come out of the territory and work in Israel, and allowed many to travel through Israel and go to hospitals and to fly out of Israel to get treatment when necessary. And many of those people who were working, as I understand it, who were working along the Gaza border before the 7th of October,
you're not entirely wrong here. If you look at looking at the crossings of people in and out of the Gaza Strip, it doesn't seem that consistent with a open air prison. You can see, I think it was more before October 7th, obviously. You see, it dropped a lot in October 2023. But just 25,000 people crossing a month, for medical treatment or for travel or for, This is just the Rafah crossing too. Look at the Erez crossing. Obviously it stopped after October 7th, but in 2022 it was there's 95,000 crossings a month of people.
They were the ones who provided a lot of the information to Hamas, and indeed in some cases joined in the attack. So I think Israel, to an extent, tried to open the borders, tried to make it a more bearable life for the people in Gaza, and was repaid by the 7th of October.
Okay, well, Rami, just respond to that then, Rami, before I get to Norman. Yeah, respond.
I'm so sorry. Can I just interject really quickly?
Yes.
Can I interject really quickly? I find it very bizarre that it's Colonel Kent who is stating this, since he was embedded in the Israeli army during the Great March of Return. And I want to ask you, sir, was it your idea to shoot Palestinians and aim to maim them as they peacefully marched for their normal and basic rights?
I bet Sinwar didn't say anything about co-opting the march to try to tear down the Gaza wall. There could have been a reality where the Great March of Return was peaceful. It was initially planned to be peaceful, but I think it was definitely co-opted by Hamas.
This is something that you have boasted about before, bear in mind.
I wasn't embedded in the IDF then or at any other time, but what I would say about that is that the Great March of Return was part of a Hamas plan to do what it did on the...
No incendiary. Yeah, I know. There were incendiary balloons as well. Like, they were literally burning farms down with their incendiary balloons. There were people who, you know, tried to walk up to the fence with fucking wire cutters. I don't know the specific... I don't know the international law surrounding this, okay? But, like, here's what I would say, like, morally, and what I would intuitively think legally. If someone is walking up to a militarized border, it's like, if you're knowingly walking up to a militarized border where you know the enemy has guns and they could shoot you, it's probably safe to assume that you have, like, deadly intent, right? Because you're walking up to someone who has deadly weapons. Like, it's probably safe to assume that there's, you know, some level of harm about to be done there. I would assume Israel has some legitimate interest and some legitimate right to shoot those people. Now, obviously, they can't, like, shoot to maim or whatever. They can't cause unnecessary or superfluous suffering. It all has to be subject to other IHL rules. I don't know the specific IHL rules about whether you can shoot people coming up to a militarized border. My guess would be yes, but I'm not entirely sure.
7th of October, and some of the people who were so-called protesting on the border had maps on them that showed the red routes and their resettlements
this is what
and equipment
everyone
so they
is
could carry
so
out the
sick
kind
of.
massacre
This
that
PR,
Hamas did itself on the 7th of
this
October.
is what we are
There were
all
weapons,
so
there were
sick
means
of.
breaking
You know,
through the border. All of
this
these
is what
things. It was the
Zionism...
first attempt to do the 7th of October, which failed.
This is... Look,
Given
sir,
warning,
you can use all the Queen's English that you like. It's not going to cover the truth of the matter of the fact that Zionism is working on a press release. They work on this image where they regurgitate news, they repeat in order for it to be truth, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah. Was Hamas in a car where Hind Rajab was shot at 355 times? Was Hamas in the Shifa hospital? A rumor that was debunked? We keep hearing the same narrative put into play and regurgitated because guess what? The only way that Israel thrives is to dehumanize Arabs. So they dehumanize...
Do I allow any references to World War II? Welcome to the stream, Contrarian Debater. Welcome. Nice to have you here. What do you mean by that? I don't trust this.
In order to get away with brutalizing them. And we are so sick of listening to this narrative, but this facade is not present anymore because everyone is seeing Israel for what it actually is. It is an occupation. It is killing civilians. For example, just now, killing Hassan Hamid, who is a 19-year-old journalist, whose remains was left in a bag and a box. You really expect his father to then come and say, yes, I definitively want peace. In what world would that be the case? I imagine if my own father, who is a man of law, if my remains were given to him in a box and a bag, I would really solemnly doubt, and especially if the law was not on his side, that he would actually talk about peace.
Okay,
so please stop beating around the bush. It's not about Hamas. It is much bigger than that. If anything, some of the main... Sorry,
we have two other guests here. Hang on, Rahma.
Ah, damn.
Some of the main resistance...
well, they're going to the other guests. Hopefully they'll bring it up
I'm sorry,
as well.
we have got two other guests who haven't spoken yet, so let me bring in Emily just to...
I wonder if the Omni-based IHL expert, Michael Schmidt, has said anything about this. He seems to have not. Well, he said, I don't trust. That's why I ask. I'm banned for just my username, so I'm super cautious before writing any message. And I don't trust. Like, the issue is, if you're like asking about like whether you can say something like references to World War II, that makes me think you're about to do some unhinged Nazi shit. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. That's what I mean by I don't trust it. Like, we'll see. Great March of Return. The Bear Institute. I wonder if they have written anything on it. Say pussy. I mean, I'll just ban you if it's too bad or anything. So, no balls. Great March of Return. European Journal, International Law, talk. Loss between law enforcement and active hostilities. Oh, it's controversial too, whether this is a law enforcement activity or whether it's a counts as like hostilities or like armed attack. Judgment remains obscure, and many parts of the world certainly require in-depth analysis. It's important to note that the court takes a very strict approach. Yeah, I don't know. A fine line between life-saving measures and forced displacement. Oh, this is... I don't know, like, maybe we'll do one... Maybe we'll do a day in the Great March of Return eventually. Here, I'm going to look at Lunarbox's notes, and I'm going to, whatever his opinion is. Found by IHL and rules on occupation. Weekly demonstrations, 50, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I think he goes through, though, a lot of... I think the UN reported a lot of people that were harmed as civilians when they probably weren't.
Respond to what Rahma was just saying. I saw you rolling your eyes.
I mean, yes, of course. I think a lot of what she was saying is projection.
That's what my baby sister does when I borrow the topic, not when I'm talking about genocide.
Exactly.
So don't talk over each other.
Exactly. What we have seen from Palestinians. You know, she's very quick to spout off names of people who are allegedly killed by Israel in various defensive airstrikes. Remember, it wasn't Israel who started this operation. I love that she brings up the Great March of Return as something that was peaceful, when in fact there's video and photo evidence of Palestinians who were paid by Hamas. They even threatened bus drivers and told them that they are forced to drive Palestinians to that border, knowing that their lives would be at risk if they tried to cross the border. And they were planting IEDs, they were throwing Molotov cocktails, they were acting aggression against the IDF in order to have the IDF act defensively. But you know, you want to talk about...
She's literally doing cuddle logic. She literally just switched from like denying the attack to like justifying it. She's literally doing the cuddle logic right now, bro. Story of a man who was accused by his neighbor of having returned a kettle in damaged condition. And 3 arguments he offers are that he had returned a kettle undamaged. So it's basically what she's saying was, at first she was like, oh, you know, it was a protesters peacefully, whatever. IDF shot them and maimed them. And then she was like, well, I don't seem all be peaceful. And now she's saying, well, why were they attacking? This is too, that it was already damaged when he borrowed it. Like, she's literally, the literal kettle logic in real time going on here.
You want to talk about Palestinians? Don't interrupt me. You want to talk about, you had your chance to talk. You had your chance to talk. You want to talk about Palestinians who have been targeted by Hamas?
But you're lying.
Why aren't you criticizing all of the Palestinians who have been persecuted by Hamas on the ground? I'm not lying. Do you know who this is?
Why should I criticize
Islam Hijazi?
Oh, now we're doing the, like, intuition pumping with, like, one sort of person. Whatever. Okay.
She was shot 90 times. She was shot 90 times. She's a Palestinian, a Palestinian humanitarian aid worker who was shot 90 times.
All right.
90 times by Hamas.
Nobody can hear either of you when you shout over each other. All right, time out, please. Time out. I need to, hang on, Rahma. If everyone just stops shouting, we'll get somewhere. Norman, you've been waiting very patiently and quietly. I was struck by something that you posted after the Hezbollah leader Nasrallah was assassinated. You said that his death left the world a more vacant place.
Oh, I can add that.
You said, may the force be with you, to the party of Saeed Nasrallah. And on
because she's kind of cute and feisty, even though she's crazy.
The YouTube channel India and Global Left, you called him a smart man and said his death had left the world a more empty place. I mean, people will find that surprising about someone who many people categorize as the leader of a terror group.
Well, the characterization of Saeed Nasrallah, the late Saeed Nasrallah, as an intelligent person, I would suspect that even the Israelis would concede that point. Professor Chomsky, who I hold in the very highest regard.
Who's the feisty one? I'm assuming the girl, Professor Chomsky, the girl that I was talking before.
Very exacting standards of intelligence and mental capacity, standards which I never felt I
the pro-Palestine
rose to,
okay.
Even as I considered myself his. I studied under him. He was my mentor. He described Saeed Nasrallah, who he met personally. He described Saeed Nasrallah and Hugo Chavez.
Wait. Noam Chomsky met Hassan Nasrallah personally? Noam Chomsky. Hassan Nasrallah. What? My dinner. What? 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 I don't know if Hassan Nasrallah is right. Hassan Nasrallah, now do we know Chomsky? Chomsky and Nasrallah, he set off alarm bells. But regardless of how you feel about the two, wouldn't you like to be a flying off at a conversation? We'll have Chomsky on the floor about it tomorrow. What?
As the two smartest political leaders in the world. And I think that's a fair characterization based on my own knowledge, which is limited because I don't read Arabic, but I did follow his speeches closely. As to the second comment of mine, you can't pick and choose what movements you would.
I mean, it's like, I don't know enough about him to know if he was the smartest person ever, but I would assume it takes a reasonable amount of intelligence to lead a terrorist organization. Intelligence is a tool, is a gift. You can do good things with it. You can do bad things with it. Clearly, he wasn't intelligent enough to know not to meet with multiple senior Hezbollah leaders after many other senior Hezbollah leaders had been assassinated in the weeks prior.
Embrace, in the sense that options can be very narrow. So let's take the case of World War II. There's no question that the Stalin regime was very brutal and that many innocents in the millions perished under Stalin's rule. Nonetheless, your Prime Minister, Churchill, my president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, embraced Stalin, and everybody in the so-called free and democratic world wished the best good fortune.
I don't think Stalin was purposely targeting civilians in the Second World War. At least not for the most part. Like, there were indiscriminate air raids, but
to the red
on both sides. Actually, some of the Nazi air raids were discriminate. They were discriminate towards Jewish people. They would bomb Jewish majority neighborhoods.
Army, as it stood the ground against the Nazis. As you know, up until 1944, 90% of the Nazi troops were on the eastern border. And as you know...
Oh my God, he talks so slow.
About 300,000 Americans died during World War II, about 400,000 Brits died during World War II, and about 30 million.
Stalin did target civilians. Well, when I say in World War II, I mean it's military. I don't think it was purposely targeting civilians. They might have been indiscriminate at times, but...
Russians died during World War II. So by a fantastical difference, it was the Russian Red Army, under the leadership of Stalin, who was a brutal leader, that defeated the Nazis. In Europe, which you're familiar with, all the underground resistance to the Nazis in the occupied countries, without exception,
like the Warsaw
those
Ghetto.
resistances were led by the communists. The communists were very brutal, but they led the resistance to the Nazis. In the same way, the Hezbollah is now leading, even though it's been significantly degraded in its military capacities, it's leading the resistance to what is a genocidal regime. In my opinion, Piers, and of course reasonable people can disagree, but my memory goes back as far as the early 2000s, when all the liberals in the world adopted this program called R2P, Responsibility to Protect. And that meant that if the other institutions of the international system failed to protect people who were suffering a genocide, it was the responsibility of states to protect where the international institutions failed.
I don't think he doesn't apply this logic to Yugoslavia, though, I'm sure.
Hezbollah
Which I think is, as far as I know, that's the only time it's even been invoked.
And it's firing on northern Israel. When Israel embarked on a genocide in
Norman's
Gaza,
such an anti-West
and
cuck, he
Hezbollah's
can't even say
position
anything
was,
good about the West
until the last day of Syed Nasrallah's life, their position was reiterated over and over again. When there is a ceasefire in Gaza, when the genocide ends, we will stop firing rockets at northern Israel. They took as their own the responsibility to protect R2P, the people of Gaza who were suffering a genocide.
I love how, can they even invoke that? Like, they're not, like, people, Hassan did this too, where they keep like trying to make it seem like the, like, non-state actors are somehow performing legitimate actions under international law when they don't have the ability to do so because they're not a state. like when Hassan is saying Yemen is enforcing their territorial waters, when like they don't, the Houthis don't have territorial waters. They're not a state. I don't know if non-state actors can act upon their responsibility to protect it all. I don't know if they can do that.
need to bring in the others. What I would say on that is, from my memory, hang on, I'll bring you all in. I'm going to correct something. My understanding, Colonel Kemp, was that Hezbollah fired the rockets before Israel did anything after October the 7th. They did it in solidarity with what Hamas had done, winning themselves
like
in that
starting
moment to
October 8th,
one of the worst terror attacks in modern times. That was my belief of what went down in those 24 hours. Perhaps you can clarify that from your perspective. But also, Norman makes a good case for something that a Lebanese friend of mine told me today, which I was quite surprised about, which is that to many people in Lebanon, Hezbollah are seen to be resistance, are seen to be people fighting for freedom, and they're not seen as terrorists. I mean, what do you feel about that? Do you feel that sometimes we in the West look at all these groups as terrorists, but they look at Israel as terrorists, and they look at themselves as resisting the terror?
Well, you're right. Hezbollah, the terrorist organisation with its terrorist leader, thank goodness he's no longer with us now, Nasrallah. Norman Finkelstein's equivalent of Stalin, and there are definitely some similarities there. They began their aggression against Israel before Israel really began effectively to fight back against in a defensive war, not a genocide by any means. The idea that what Israel's doing in Gaza is a genocide is nothing but an obscenity.
Finkelstein is not like happy.
Utter those words is beyond me. But the reality is that Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran. It doesn't exist in its own right. It was created by Iran. It's funded by Iran. It's armed by Iran. It's directed by Iran. And it exists as part of a ring of steel of Iranian proxies around Israel with the intention to destroy Israel. This has nothing to do with protecting anybody. It's all about trying to annihilate Israel.
I mean, obviously, Iran funds the Houthis and Hezbollah quite a bit. And I don't know if I completely. I don't know enough to completely agree or disagree with that, I guess.
Which is one of Iran's agendas. And let's not forget as well that most Arab countries in the region, including Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others, are very firmly on the side of Israel because they recognise they want Israel to defeat Hezbollah, they want Israel to defeat Hamas. Because they recognise that Iran is as big a threat to them as it is to Israel, perhaps even a bigger threat.
It's not about
the idea that Iran can gain nuclear weapons is absolutely abhorrent to most of the Arab countries. And you just have to look at the way that Iran is motivating its
Hezbollah
proxies in Yemen to attack international
Hezbollah.
trade. These people, these Iranian proxies, are the enemies of not just Israel, but the Middle East and the West. And Iran's primary objective is to gain supremacy over Sunni Islam in the Middle East.
Okay, hang on. Let me bring in Rahma. Can you say that's not the case? But Rahma, before you respond,
I'm so sorry.
Hang on, Rahma.
I'm so sorry. This is not the case.
I'm about to say something.
Israel is now holding the Philadelphia. Okay.
Hang on. I was just
For
going to say,
example, he's stating now.
it is surely indisputable that Iran is funding and resourcing.
I wonder why they would want to hold the Philadelphia corridor.
The Houthis with a combined ideology of trying to get rid of Israel. But surely that's indisputable, isn't it?
Listen, Piers, this is the thing, and this is the real issue. When you take something out of context, you are negating the fact that there has been resistance long before Hezbollah, long before Hamas. Actually, when you talk about some of the founders of the PLO, they were Christian communists. It doesn't. The point is, you occupy, you will gain resistance. It is a narrative that is not ours. When you assume that a people should be occupied and do nothing about it, you have, for example, a mother who gave birth in Al-Quds to triplets, and she didn't get the permit, so Israel sent her back to Gaza. So she had to leave these triplets. When you go talk to this mother of three, what do you expect her to tell you? And these incidents have been happening long before Hamas and Hezbollah. And that is the point. It is a PR strategy of theirs that they regurgitate in mainstream media to tell you it's Iran or to tell you that it's.
I don't think it's a PR strategy.
But what you are negating is that the whole world.
Okay.
Listen, I'm sorry. Just let me finish my point.
Finish your point.
Just let me finish this one, please. There is a CIA report. Okay, I will. There is a CIA report, for
Oh,
example,
man.
that was founded, and it
boy.
states the aggressively ideological nature of Zionism, which emphasizes that all Jews belong to Israel and must return to Israel, has had its drawbacks in enlisting support for intelligence operations, since there is a considerable opposition to Zionism among Jews from around the world. Aware of this fact, Israeli intelligence representatives usually operate discreetly within Jewish communities and are under instructions to handle their missions with utmost tact to avoid embarrassment to Israel. Obviously, this representatives usually operate discreetly within Jewish communities and are under instructions.
What are they operating discreetly? Are they going to like Jewish diaspora communities to recruit people?
To handle their missions with utmost tact to avoid embarrassment to Israel. Obviously, this is not the same tact because Israel is extremely embarrassed at this point, and you are negating the fact that Tim Walz in a vice presidential debate stated the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States.
Okay.
Do you expect a people to have
Philadelphia? I thought it was Philadelphia. What? What's up, Adam and Mar? Welcome to the stream. Welcome. How do you even pronounce that? Hold on. If I look up Philadelphia corridor, it'll come up. I'm being. What? Whoa. Whoa. What? No. It's not. How do I pronounce this? Google just autocorrects to Philadelphia. It's pronounced the same. Philadelphia. No, fuck that. I'm gonna say Philadelphia corridor. What? Fake. You're gaslighting me. Wikipedia is gaslighting me too.
their land being taken and do nothing?
Okay, Emily, look, in the same way that when I have these debates, when I hear Israelis say, or pro-Israeli people say that what else was Israel supposed to do but defend itself, I have a lot of sympathy for that. The scale of how they've gone about it, I have some issues with. But the principle of defending itself against a counterattack, I get it. But I also understand Rahma's wider point, which is where there is a clear occupation and oppression of a people, as it clearly has been, whatever you want to call it, Israel has been controlling the lives of people in Gaza for a long period of time, and the general quality of life of people in Gaza is appalling, particularly by comparison to people across the border in Israel. And I think they should be entitled to the exact...
I've been watching nonstop Piers Morgan only do its commentary. I like now, really?
same human rights and hopes and
I
aspirations.
mean, that's what I do just for my YouTube reaction content. That's what I have to do for the
at the
YouTube
moment,
grind.
Netanyahu is showing zero sign of wanting that to happen. He talks constantly about destroying Hamas, destroying Hezbollah, destroying Iran, destroying everybody. But ultimately, what's the end game? What happens then? And how do you not just fuel the ideology that created all this trouble?
Well, I mean, there's a few things I want to address, and obviously I appreciate that you pointed out the fact that Hezbollah did attack Israel before Israel had responded. There's a lot of activity from the anti-Israel movements. Even they were protesting against Israel before Israel had responded. By the end of October 7th in the United States, there were anti-Israel protests. So there's something inherently wrong here because Israel hadn't even responded. So it's not actually about that. It's about supporting terrorism. Now, when it comes to the responsibility to protect, we have to remember that Hezbollah is not a state actor. Hezbollah is a terror proxy of the Islamic Republic.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes.
It is occupying and colonizing parts of the Middle East, including some parts of Syria, even. And of course, we have other terror proxies in Yemen, in Iraq, in all kinds of other places that are being.
Would you go on his show? I mean, I'm nowhere near big enough to go on his show, but I mean, yeah, like, duh. Like, even if I thought I would be absolutely, completely destroyed by whoever was on it, like, yeah, absolutely, I would go on his show.
Being orchestrated by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And, to Rahma's point about occupation, there are occupations, military occupations, many of which are legal, some of which are illegal, all over the world. And we don't see the people who are occupied carrying out the same savage acts of barbarism that we saw a year ago today. We don't see families being slaughtered, women being raped, tied to trees and raped and sexually mutilated, the same way that we saw Hamas do. Same way that we saw Hamas do in Gaza. And I'm sorry, but what part of Yemen is Israel occupying? Again, this is an orchestrated campaign by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Just because the population is occupied under international law does not give them the right to kill civilians, especially civilians in an indisputed area such as the Gaza War community.
How dare you? We're very much from stealing your time.
How dare you? Real? Oh, they're speaking fast. I gotta slow it down. Oops.
People who support peace with the Palestinians. We're very much from killing your
These
child.
are people who
support. These are people who support peace with the Palestinians.
Are you
These are people who wanted a two-state solution, and instead, what?
He's inviting more streamers all the time. You never know. I don't. I'm pretty sure like the smallest streamer I've seen on there is Destiny. I don't think I've seen anyone smaller and less mainstream than Destiny on Piers Morgan. So, I got quite a ways to go. I got 7 viewers right now on Twitch, another 6 on YouTube, and then 5 on YouTube, 4 on YouTube Shorts. Someone scrolled away, and 4 on Rumble, and who knows how many on Twitter or Kick or whatever. Henry was on. Henry who? I don't know. Oh, Henry Sisson, or that's Harry, isn't it? I don't have any on Kick. I only have 1 on Kick. Tony was there for a little bit, but I'm assuming the 1 on Kick is me. Speaking of which, by the way, I'm begging for YouTube subs. Anyone who is not subbed on YouTube, please subscribe. It would really help out a lot. If you're on Twitch, you can just go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I don't even care if you turn notifications on. It would just be really helpful. Hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate it very much, so I can get to 1,000 subs and be monetized on YouTube. Thank you. Okay, anyway.
They get in return. They got thousands of casualties. They got thousands of terrorists, including Gaza civilians.
Fake news.
Okay, again, time out because we can't hear you. We can't hear either of you because you're both shouting. Let me bring in Norman again, waiting patiently as you two were shouting at each other. Norman, what happens here now? Putting aside all the "how do we get here" arguments, which we've had many times, what is going to happen here? I mean, you're a scholar of this region for many decades. How concerned are you now that we might be entering a really potentially uncontrollable phase of this conflict, which could lead to a much wider war?
First of all, I made clear my own opinion several
And now I got to speed it up again because Finkelstein's talking.
months ago, and I think even on your program, but I could be mistaken there, when I was asked what do you expect for the day after, I said already several months ago when people were contemplating the day after, I said, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I believe we're closer to the beginning than to the end. So it was not entirely unpredictable that it would last a year, and it may go on for a considerably greater period of time. Secondly,
I don't think anyone, I don't know if people really not expecting it to last a year. I'm pretty sure, like, pretty quickly after it happened, at least, like, Israel said that it was going to last several months at least. But, all right, I don't know.
I already said in an article I wrote in April entitled Cassandra and Samson, or Samson and Cassandra. Cassandra being the mythical figure who was always the bearer of bad news, and Samson is the fellow who brought down the temple in order to avert his own, in order to bring others along with him when his time was up. I said there were real dangers that we were heading towards nuclear conflagration, and those dangers loom as we speak right now, especially with the intention.
I don't know if Piers is grifting. I think Piers, I think just doesn't. I think Piers thinks about it too much. I think he just does what's logical to him, which is asking people to condemn both sides and doing the both sides thing. I I mean, maybe I'm being too mean to Fierce or whatever. I just think he likes milking it for content, and so do I.
Of
So
Israel, or the desire of
That's
Israel
cool with me.
to go after Iran. It's very amusing to listen to Naftali Bennett speak. This was the same Israeli government who exhorted and encouraged the United States to go to Iraq. And you might recall, just as Naftali Bennett prophesizes that the Iranian people will welcome the U.S. force, you will recall on the eve of the attack on Iraq, it was said that the Americans would be greeted with flowers and chocolate. That was the famous image. Well, that didn't quite turn.
That's not. I understand what he's trying to say, but like, what the guy said is that there's a lot of people in Iran who want regime change. Would they necessarily? Obviously, they'd probably be opposed to another like Western style leader, Shah, because like most of the people there are Islamic. Most of the people there would probably prefer some type of government that espouses Islamic values. And they probably wouldn't like any prolonged U.S. occupation of Iran or anything like we did in Iraq. Doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of people in Iran don't want regime change.
So
just like I'm sure a lot of people in Iraq wanted regime change.
The Iranian people would welcome the United States. The Iranian people
they
do want
probably
regime
don't
change.
like
That's been clear. Quite frankly,
yeah, I don't think, Ms. Shrader,
As long as
I would
it's a regime change
appreciate
that doesn't
it.
nationalize
I would
your oil, I
appreciate it
think
if
the
you
West
let
would
me.
be fine, no?
Let Norman finish his
I would
point.
not want to get in the.
I'm curious. Go ahead, Norman.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, thank you very much, Ms. Shrader. You seem to be in charge of everything. You don't only want to control the Middle East, you want to control the airwaves in the entire world. In any event, I do believe that there are serious dangers now, and I think we should heed the lessons of history about invading large countries which don't want a foreign occupation. Now, having said that, you ask where we're headed. I think we have to have clarity first on where we've come from. Now, I've followed Mr. Kemp for many years. He's kind of an official Israeli cheerleader who the Israelis bring out every time they carry out a high-tech killing spree in Gaza. Mr. Kemp is rolled out. I don't know if he's a true believer. Maybe he's one of those Zionist fundamentalists.
Fundamentalists. I don't know
maybe
enough
he's being
about it.
paid
Maybe
by
he is.
Israel.
Maybe
I
he's
don't
the
know.
ultimate,
But
the ultimate Hezbollah agent.
what I do know is you can never attach any truth value to anything Mr. Kemp has to say. I wrote a book on Gaza, and if you turn to the index, you'll see there are many entries on the limitless lies of Richard Kemp. So let's turn to what he said now. He said he's shocked that I would describe what's going on in Gaza as a genocide. Well, with the exception of 2 of the 17 judges in the International Court of Justice, 15 of the 17 judges, they themselves were persuaded that Israel was plausibly committing a genocide in Gaza. So it's not just this weird, aberrant Professor Finkelstein.
I think he's misrepresenting the ruling, right? Because they rule on the plausibility of rights, not really on whether there was plausibility he was actually committing a genocide. I think there were judges. I don't know. Fuck, I don't remember this point. ICJ possible. I think there were judges who did think that Israel was plausibly committing a genocide, but that's not what the ruling actually held. Because I think just wants to discuss the most controversial topics in the show. I'm sure Valentine needs to find out positive controversy. Yeah. I don't. I mean, it's Finkelstein, so I'm kind of gonna assume that he's misrepresenting it. But
it's the top judicial body in the world. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Kemp the following question. He says it's not a genocide that's occurring in Gaza. So here is a perplexity to me.
Why is
it that proportionately more medics have been killed in Gaza than in any other war zone in the world? Why is it that more journalists have been killed in Gaza than in any other war zone in the world? Why is it that more UN workers have been killed in Gaza than anywhere else, any other war zone?
Probably just a more dangerous place, and Hamas actively fails in passive precautions. If you look at the actual relative risk of the war, I think this is not the updated relative risk, but like the relative risk of the war is like 20, or is this no, this is March 11th. Actually, this is updated. Okay. This has the relative risk at 35.6. So basically, that it's kind of the per capita version of the military to civilian combatant ratio. Basically, it means that if you're militant, you're like 35 times more likely to be killed. Then thanks for the follow, Adam Amar. I appreciate it very much. Basically means you're like, also whoever subbed on YouTube, thank you very much. It doesn't show up on screen. It might eventually, but thank you. I appreciate it a lot. I noticed the counter went up. Basically means like you're 35 times more likely to be killed if you're a militant than if you're a civilian.
In the world. Why is it that yesterday, 45 doctors who served in Gaza this past year, 45 doctors, published a letter in which they said that every day in the hospitals, they had to deal with children who were shot in the head or in the chest. It wasn't shrapnel. It wasn't indiscriminate bombing. It was children who were targeted in the head and the chest. Why is that, Mr. Kemp?
I didn't read the full letter.
Israel's favorite cheerleader with his pom-poms.
Okay.
Why is it, Mr. Kemp? Why is it, Mr. Kemp?
Israel.
Allow me just to finish. Why is it, Mr. Kemp?
Let him start talking. I want to come. Let Colonel Kemp respond. There's a lot of allegations.
Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish.
Okay.
Why is it, Mr. Kemp, that Israeli snipers shot at 2 women in a church convent when all the details of their presence have been sent to Israeli military officials? Why did Israel fire 2 tank shells in the convent complex at a building housing 54 children with disabilities? Does that sound to you like a war,
okay, well,
Mr. Kemp? Or does it sound to you like a genocide?
Norman, I want to let Colonel Kemp respond. You made a number of allegations against him. Colonel Kemp, your chance to respond.
Can I add?
No, Rahma, I want Colonel Kemp to be able to respond. So let him respond. Colonel Kemp.
I wouldn't accuse Professor Finkelstein of lying as he accused me of lying, but he's obviously badly mistaken about the decision or the pronouncement of the International Court of Justice, who did not say, no justice on that court said that Israel's plausibly committing a genocide. And that's been clarified by the former president of the ICJ.
That's a flat-out lie.
And it was said that...
I'm pretty sure he's right about the ruling not holding that Israel is plausibly committing a genocide. The ruling was just about the plausibility of rights. But I am fairly certain that there were judges who did also think Israel's committing genocide. I mean, obviously it doesn't make them right, but...
You want to control the airwaves now, Mr. Finkelstein, do you? It was said that, that South Africa had a plausible case, was in a plausible position to bring a case of genocide, not that there was a plausible genocide.
That's a flat-out lie.
Dismissed by the international...
I'm embarrassed by my old Ukraine Facebook war post. What were your old Ukraine Facebook war
International Court of
posts?
Justice. And the second thing is, all the examples that Mr. Finkelstein gave, just he reeled off just now, I can't answer every single one of those allegations, but let's assume they all did happen, as he said. Let's assume that. I don't believe they did, but let's assume it. None of that is genocide. What is genocide? Is Hamas's
There's
policy.
IDF soldiers on TikTok showcasing their war crimes
charter
audaciously.
describes its mission as being genocide against both the Israelis and the Jewish people as a whole. Their actions on the 7th of October confirmed their intent to commit genocide. The words of their leaders repeatedly, wanting to do more and more 7th of Octobers, reaffirms that policy. It is Hamas that is a genocidal terrorist organization. Israel is a Western liberal democracy defending its own people according to international law. They've taken
No, it's not
the
a
greatest
democracy.
possible steps
Founding a
to provide
state on the
humanitarian aid
basis
to
that you
Gaza.
are a
They've taken the
Jew is
greatest
not a
possible steps,
democracy.
greater than any other army in
for the
history,
hype.
to minimize the deaths of innocent civilians, while Hamas have been doing all they can to maximize the deaths of their own civilians,
Okay,
to bring the kind of international pressure we're seeing from the ICC and the
Let me,
ICJ.
all right, Rahma, I'll give you a quick chance to respond, and then Emily can respond to you, and then we're done. So, Rahma, quick response.
Thank you, Piers. Listen, I was at the Rafah border. Starting 3 a.m., they wait until you sleep. Can you imagine the torture? They started carpet bombing, one bomb after the next. Lucky for you, sir, I was there. And what happens is there are Palestinian families on either side getting their reports from families who are being eradicated. Over 900 families. I don't know 900 families. So when you have this, and you have the audacious talent to state what you're stating, the way you are stating, I am flabbergasted, and I feel more sorry for you than the footage of a young girl drawing her last breath from the rubble. You have IDF, one second, you have IDF soldiers donning. So one second, Hezbollah is giving these IDF soldiers the lingerie of Palestinian women who are dead or displaced, or their toys that they are audaciously playing with and sharing on their TikTok as they're bombing. What about the boat? There is a boat that they organize so that civilians can watch the destruction in Gaza as if they're watching the fireworks of 4th of July.
What? Oh, that okay.
It was Hezbollah.
I thought she was going to talk about like the flotilla.
The stones of Belbas in Lebanon is Hamas in the car of a child who was shot at 355 times.
Okay, but Rahma, did you feel as angry and incensed by Hamas using GoPro cameras to record the appalling atrocities they were committing in real time on October the 7th?
That's the thing, Piers. I don't... That's what I'm trying to state, Piers. I don't matter
man,
whether
boy.
But I'm asking you.
Rahma thinks
I'm asking you if you feel strongly about that.
Was it 1 second, Piers? 1 second. Was it inevitable? That's what I'm saying. You cannot keep trying to
That wasn't my question.
dictate the narrative.
Now we have the again. I mean, it's just Piers milking it for content, trying to get people to condemn both sides. But we also have again the infinite like making excuses for Palestinians of why they're radicalized, but never Israel. You know, Palestinians' radicalization is just a response to their horrible conditions, but Israel is just like the ultimate like evil state. The reason people in Israel are like radicalized and watching Gaza getting bombed is not because Israel has been under attack by Palestinians for 50 years or whatever.
In such a way that we are watching the atrocities that we are watching.
My question.
I will not answer your question.
Okay.
Can I tell you why?
Then that's fine.
I cannot answer your question because it takes things out of context.
Okay. Actually, it's a very straightforward. It's a very straightforward comparison. And here's my problem.
Here's my problem. People, of massacre of 1948, because that's.
I understand.
Piers, I'm going to finalize in one sentence. Piers, let me finalize in one sentence. That's the propaganda machine of having the 7th of October. We have this Arabic saying, they keep regurgitating, which then negates what happened in Deir Yassin massacre, what happened in Ventura, what happened in Kibya,
Okay.
what happened to all these
You
people
made
that
your
you
point.
want to find peace.
Rahma,
Why are we bringing up Deir
It's by
Yassin now?
That's the end of your one
Listening to
sentence. Okay, my point to you is simply that, if you feel that angry about what Israel's doing and showing off some of the atrocities they've been committing, you should feel the same way about Hamas, but you refuse to answer that. Emily, final word to you.
But this is
No, Rahma, that's it. Emily.
what was inevitably going to
Rahma,
happen.
stop talking, please. It's Emily's chance to just finish off.
The fact that we've received, it was released today, 12,400 rockets from Hezbollah in the last year makes it pretty clear. It isn't Israel who initiated this conflict. It isn't Israel who initiated anything on October 7th. We hadn't even responded when we started getting attacked on multiple fronts. We're now fighting on 7 fronts. None of those are things that were initiated by us. And it's also very clear that this is not just about land. It's not just about territory. It's not even about a Palestinian state. That is why we see right now in Tehran, there is a banner that says the state of Israel needs to be eliminated from the face of the earth. They even wrote it in Hebrew. In the heart of Tehran, that is what the regime put up. It's very clear what their agenda is, and that is what they have acted on with the hundreds of millions of dollars that they have funded these terrorist organizations with, which, by the way, are harming Arab Muslims, majority Arab Muslims throughout the Middle East, including Syrians, Lebanese, many of whom are very much against Hezbollah, who feel that there is an occupation of Islamic people throughout the Arab Muslim world, as well as because I actually speak to them on a regular basis as a journalist.
I mean, I think a lot of it is probably social media, right? It's just so easy for it's so easy for propaganda to spread on both sides. October 7th, what about the highly politicized massacre that happened almost 85 years ago? Yeah, I know. I don't know why she's bringing it up, Deir Yassin.
I was speaking to them earlier today, and many of them told me, please, when you go on, speak about the fact that the Lebanese are being occupied by Hezbollah, and we don't want Hezbollah. UNIFIL has been in place for how long? They've received $2.5 billion only from the United States since 2006 alone. What have they accomplished? They haven't kept.
You don't want resistance, you stop
Hezbollah to withdraw to the other side of the Litani. They haven't disarmed Hezbollah. They haven't demilitarized Hezbollah, and so you can't be upset when Israel is forced to act because we have 60, 70,000 families who have been out of their homes since October 8th as a result of
I've got to leave it there.
2,000 people in the span
I've
of
got to
the
leave it there. Thank you. Listen, I understand everyone has strong. I understand there are strong opinions on all sides. I really appreciate the whole panel coming together, and I thank you for your time. And these are worrying times. I understand that. Passions are running high, but thank you for debating it together. I appreciate it.
Wild. Damn, we're so close to solving it. Just a few more Piers Morgan video, a few more Nonfon Piers Morgan reactions, and we will solve it. It will be done. Everyone will be on the same page. There'll be a 2-state solution. Just a few more Piers Morgan reaction contents. That's all it took. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.